Take a second to think about all the stuff you have to do just to keep your life on the rails. And how much, sometimes, you just don't want to do it.
Having to book doctor's appointments, having to look at how much your pension has gone up based off of where you're investing that into, that's not necessarily something that's fun to do.
But what if the tedious parts of life, paperwork and paying bills, could be fun? Hi, I'm Paul Havershood. Welcome to The Cost of Living. Now, those of us familiar with the timeless art of procrastination know the sweet satisfaction of doing anything besides what you should be doing. But it can also cost us in money and stress. So what if doing the boring stuff was more like a party with your friends? Would you go? Also today, for a long time, Canadian real estate was basically house price go up. Until lately. Home prices are now falling. So, is this just a blip or something more? Up first, free trade negotiations with the US and Mexico are back on. So, expect more chirping from a certain someone in the White House about how Canada has nothing of value, which would make sense except for, well, all our valuable stuff. We've heard all about how Canada is kind of the worst. We don't offer anything of value, and we apparently treat our neighbor very badly, very, very badly. Now, the person we hear this from is, you know who.
We don't need them to make our cars, and they make a lot of them. We don't need their lumber because we have our own forests, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need their oil and gas. We have more than anybody.
Does the U.S. really not need Canada? Or is this just posturing? And Canada is now negotiating CUSMA, our free trade deal with the US and Mexico, saying, I don't want what you have, is a classic Donald Trump negotiating tactic. But we do need to figure out if he means it. A deadline is looming, July 1st. That's when the countries will decide to either keep the deal or scrap it. If that happens, losing unfettered access to the world's richest market would be, well, bad. And Trump could walk away from CUSMA. He's called the deal irrelevant. But is it really? Could the US need Canada a little more than Trump lets on? We know it needs the 4 million barrels of oil we send there every day. The war in the Persian Gulf is making that abundantly clear. It's also hitting the global supply of fertilizer. But the world's biggest potash producer, Nutrien, in Saskatoon, has US farmers covered. And let's look at something else they would seem to need. Something essential to all American products, from a Ford pickup to a can of Budweiser. Aluminum.
The US consumes about 4.5 million tons of aluminum a year, and they produce 670,000 tons. So they have to import.
Jean Simard is the head of the Aluminum Association of Canada. And you heard those numbers right. The US doesn't make that much aluminum. It needs to import. So it does. From us. Canada supplies 60% of US demand. Trump wants that to change. He's using tariffs to try and reinvigorate the US industrial base. His thinking? Make imports more expensive, and American factories will spring back to life. Could that work for aluminum?
For the US to produce the same thing, to replace us, would require the equivalent of at least 5 Hoover dams.
Damn! That's a lot of dams. But that's how much hydroelectric power it would take to replace Canadian aluminum. And it's the kind of power the US doesn't have. But Canada does. Making aluminum takes so much energy, it's been called electricity in solid form. Canada has 10 aluminum smelters, 9 in Quebec and 1 in BC, all powered by hydro. The US could try to replace that production, but it wouldn't be easy. its aluminum industry has been shrinking. Most of its smelters are old and small. One new plant is being proposed in Oklahoma, but it's still years away and may never happen. In part because the amount of electricity it would take could run nearly 500 data centers. So the US needs to figure out what's better, making aluminum or powering AI. Jean doesn't think it's much of a choice at all.
It's better to use it for data centers and artificial intelligence in today's world, looking forward, than to replace safe and secure source of supply coming from your northern neighbor.
Trump's tariff on Canadian aluminum is now 50%. It's sent the price of aluminum in the US to more than $5,000 a ton. Without the tariff, it would be more like $3,000. In a different world, US buyers could say, okay, Canada, we'll buy from you, but you have to split the tariff costs. But they can't do that. Aluminum is a tight market. Global supply just covers global demand. So that leaves Canadian producers with options. We can sell to Europe, and we are. And US companies, well, they're left to either eat the extra tariff costs or pass them on to consumers. And that adds to inflation, which is not popular with voters. Jean thinks this means time is on Canada's side, and that aluminum is an arrow in the quiver for our trade negotiators, regardless of what Trump says about not needing Canada.
We just have to stay the course and certainly not react to, in French, we see des effets de touche, like, grandstanding and throwing us off and everything.
We know Trump's a big talker. Who can forget the good times of the 51st state stuff? Huh. Well, Bill Reinsch says get ready for more of that as the July 1st deadline for CUSMA gets closer. He's a former head of the U.S. National Foreign Trade Council.
There's going to be a lot of drama between now and July 1. There will be, I'm sure, from Trump, multiple threats to withdraw, threats of new tariffs, threats of other punishments, threats to negotiate separate agreements with each of the two partners rather than a single agreement.
The U.S. would love to split up Canada and Mexico because the size of its economy makes it the big dog. So if it's able to negotiate one-on-one with another country, it can really put the screws to it.
I mean, the normal Trump approach, if you look at all of the negotiations he's had, has been to come in to make extreme demands in which he asks the other country to give everything and in which the United States gives nothing. And then there's a negotiation.
So if we are negotiating and Trump is bluffing about wanting to scrap the deal, what kind of cards does Canada have to play and how can we play them? Well, look at aluminum. We have it. They need it. So, yes, it's a card, but it needs to be played delicately. Every year, Canada's aluminum industry spends billions upgrading and expanding plants. And they don't really have an option. They have to do this. They have to keep up with foreign competitors who have bigger, more modern smelters. And the reason our industry can do this, our best customer is right next door. So we can't really play hardball and say, we won't sell to you anymore. But what's happening now with Trump's tariffs is also paralyzing our industry and their spending. So what should be a bright future is now uncertain. So yes, aluminum does give us some leverage at the CUSMA table, but our negotiators can't overplay their hand. They more just need to be pointed in how they say, you need us. That's something Bill says people in the Trump administration do know.
I mean, he's got very smart people who work for him, not all of them, but these are not dummies. The question with Trump always is whether he'll take the advice that he's being given. He gets good advice on stuff like this. Whether he takes it, nobody knows. And from day to day, it varies.
Whether it's aluminum, oil, potash, Canada and the U.S. have a symbiotic relationship. Trump may keep cutting off his nose to spite his face and plunge on with tariffs. The job for our trade negotiators is to make it unavoidably clear that free trade with Canada is good for a lot of Americans. something Bill says could help that case: the timing of U.S. midterm elections in November.
I think his political advisors will tell him that pulling out or otherwise destroying an agreement that is fundamental to all three countries' economies 4 months before an election is a huge political mistake. And it would cost him a lot of votes that matter to him and that he's counting on.
Trump's bluster, we don't need Canada, can make it seem like we're going to the table hat in hand. But Jean Simard, who knows the ins and outs of aluminum, he's not buying it. He looks at Trump like a homebuyer trying to get a house below list price. Place needs renos. We won't use the pool. We don't want the garage.
But actually, they're looking for a 3-door garage. They want the house. They love the pool, but they won't say it. So to me, it's revealing the strong cards that we have as a country. And we have to turn things around and understand that and play it accordingly.
We know we have a nice house. Probably the nicest on the block. So, yeah, let's make a deal. This is The Cost of Living. Listen to us on CBC Radio 1 or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Far be it for me to suggest you procrastinate, but do you ever put stuff off? Dentist appointment? I'll make it tomorrow. Bills? They can wait. Some of us know what it's like to really let stuff pile up. Eventually, though, you have to handle your business or it will cost you. And more people are now finding a way to do the tedious stuff. Only they're making it fun.
LaDante Smith was facing a crisis. Between big goals like saving more money and small things like making eye appointments, his to-do list was getting out of hand.
Having to book doctor's appointments, having to look at how much your pension has gone up based off of where you're investing that into, that's not necessarily something that's fun to do.
He was living in Toronto. 30 was around the corner, and he had that creeping feeling of
like the late 20s angst.
LaDante needed to get his life together, so he threw a party.
We're going to have hot pot, we're going to have wine, and we're going to yap too, right? A lot of it is just
Not too much yapping, though, because this party was about getting stuff done. Admin parties, where friends get together to hang out and lock in.
It is literally just you and your friends showing up in sweatpants and dealing with all the administrative tasks that have been clouding your brain and mental energy.
They're catching on, thanks to videos like this.
Canceling old subscriptions, cleaning out inboxes, booking
Liz
doctor-
Enriquez is a money coach and blogger behind the site Ambitious Adulting, and she's a big fan of these kinds of parties. She says they can help people keep on top of the boring stuff, like paying bills.
Well, I mean, ignoring bills will cause an effect on your credit score. So every time you miss a payment,
They also set a date for people to take stock of their money, what's coming in and going out.
When I work with people's finances, a lot of the times they have no idea how much they're paying in fees. They have no idea how much they even make. They don't know how much they're spending each year. They have no idea how much they're spending on groceries. It's like, do you know that you're paying, $200 a month on subscription services? Like, do you use all of these?
But there's a reason people avoid paperwork. Doing these tasks, even if they have long-term rewards, doesn't always come with a feel-good rush.
We are like Veruca Salt from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. If you recall, her mantra was, I don't care how, I want it now.
Pierce Steele studies procrastination.
Now is sweet, now is delicious. Later? Not so much.
He teaches at the Haskayne School of Business at the University of Calgary. And he's not surprised admin nights are a thing.
The truth is, that's the way how we were designed to do work.
Pierce says it's easier to work with friends. More bearable. Even fun.
And it's in our genes, right? It's from hunting to berry picking to child raising. So you have it like throughout all of history, and canning parties, barn raising, sewing circles. It's everywhere and anywhere.
Since hosting his first admin party, LaDante says he's gotten better with money. He started investing and he's saving more. But these parties are not just about finances. He and his friends have created a whole system for life goals. They map them out when they get together.
So there is a financial bucket, there is a career bucket, there's spirituality, there is dating and romance, there's hobbies.
And every few months, they rate their success and report back to each other. Love life at a 6? Ooh, can you up that to a 7?
I know this might sound like a lot, but it's so fun, especially when you're doing it with a group or like a friend.
For The Cost of Living, I'm Jenny DeRosio.
This is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Don't look now, but Canada's housing market is cooling off. No, really. The average house price, which only ever seemed to go up, has actually gone down. So, does this mean we're through the woods? Homes are now affordable, and we can stop talking about the housing crunch? Well, Mike Moffatt is a housing economist and the founder of the Missing Middle Initiative at Carleton University. Mike, hi. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, Mike, is it now easier to buy a home than it has been?
I would say it's slightly easier than a year ago, but we should be careful here. The prices are down a little bit, but the average home price in Canada is still over $650,000. So that's below the $700,000 plus that it was before. But for the average young couple, that's still 6 or 7 times their combined annual income. The normal sort of guidepost is having homes that are 3 times the level of income. So we're not anywhere close to affordability. We are moving in the right direction, but we need to see more action on home prices and more action on incomes as well.
Okay, so more affordable doesn't necessarily equate to affordable, but if we do look at let's just pause and look at the somewhat good news here and focus on prices, how much have they come down and why have they softened?
So they're down about 5% over the last year, though real estate is incredibly local. So it depends on where in the country you are and the type of home. So condos in Toronto and Vancouver are down as much as 30 or 40% from their peaks about 18 months ago. Other types of homes in other parts of the country are nearly flat. So we have seen some decline again in some market segments. And a lot of that is just due to reduced demand that we've seen overall a slowing of the economy. And we've also seen slow population growth. That Statistics Canada actually just recently reported that the first time in Canadian history, our population is falling due to the changes in immigration and temporary foreign worker and international student programs. So that's taken a lot of the demand out of the system. My fear is that this is a temporary condition, that we haven't really solved the challenges of building homes, whether they be rental or ownership homes, at a much lower price than needed. So my fear is that we get to a point where we're not really building much for a few years because we feel like we don't need to. And then all of a sudden, when the economy improves or immigration rates go back up, that we could start to see prices continue. So we need a sustained decline in prices, not just a temporary blip. My fear is we're seeing a bit of a temporary blip.
Okay, what is happening on the supply side of things? Like, are we building more homes across the country? Not so much. Where are we at?
We had increased housing starts in 2025. In 2024, we had about 245,000. In 2025, we had about 260,000, so 15,000 unit increase. That's a little bit misleading, though, because partly what we're building is more smaller units, more kind of 1 and 2 bedroom units, and those are very much needed, but they don't house as many people as a family-sized home. But we're also seeing a reduction in activity, that housing starts are expected to fall in 2026, 27, and 2028, according to CMHC forecasts. Because housing starts are a bit of a lagging indicator, that it reflects kind of the state of the market 2 years ago when the decisions were made. But what we're seeing now is a lack of new activity, a lack of pre-construction sales. So it does look like housing starts, unfortunately, are going to fall each of the next 3 years.
Are any cities across the country getting it right in terms of adding more homes and the types of homes you think they should?
I would Edmonton, I think, would be the first city I would look at. That they're doing a good combination of things where they are building high rise, but they're also building a lot of missing middle housing. They have really changed the way that they do zoning and approvals process to allow for 6 and 8 unit buildings as of right. And although other municipalities have introduced similar sounding reforms, the data that we've seen shows that Edmonton is really walking the walk there, that they're actually getting shovels in the ground on those units, as opposed to other communities like, I would say, the city of Toronto, where there are still so many barriers to building those things, having to go through a committee of adjustment and so on, that even though these things are possible on paper, or at least in theory, they're not so viable in practice.
What about the federal government? I mean, when the federal Liberals ran, they ran on building more homes. That was one of their election promises. They promised to double the pace of home building over the next decade. We're only just almost a year into that, but do we have any sense of how that's going?
So we haven't really seen a lot yet from the federal government that would get us to 500,000 homes. So that's essentially what doubling would be, going from 250 to 500,000, and we're only up to about 260,000 right now. Even if the federal government's plan works, it's very heavily focused on their new initiative, Build Canada Homes, which is using government land and procurement to build social housing. That's going to take time. You're not going to be able to build those overnight. So we're really not going to see the fruits of that until probably about the end of the decade. Other than that, we really haven't seen much in action. We had the first time home buyers HST credit that's helpful for getting some young buyers into ownership housing. But overall, we're yet to see the effects of these federal changes. But as you point out, has only been a year, so it probably will take a little bit more time.
Is that enough, or do other things need to happen to improve the housing market situation the way you think it should?
It's not nearly enough. It's certainly helpful, but we need to, ultimately find a way to build homes at a price point that is around 3 times a family's income. So again, if you have a young couple, that would be, maybe they'd be earning $100,000 a year. We have to figure out how to build a home that's suitable for them. Nothing fancy, but meets their needs at a price point, somewhere in that $300,000 to $400,000 range. And to do that, we're going to have to look at a whole host of costs. So the cost of construction, the cost of land, and so on. Now, the federal government doesn't have that many levers when it comes to that sort of thing, but the one that they do have is the HST. And they have removed the HST on purpose-built rental construction, and that has been incredibly helpful. They do have the rebate for HST for first-time home buyers. It would be helpful if they extended that to other home buyers. We have what I call in Canada a second-time home buyers problem, where you have a young couple that perhaps in their late 20s and early 30s, bought one of those one-bedroom condos, and now they have a child or two, or a child or two is on the way, and they need something larger. They don't have the ability right now, or the finances right now, to move out of that one-bedroom condo into something, say, like a 3-bedroom townhouse. Removing the HST on those buyers would certainly help, because it would lower the price of building those new homes. It would also help seniors. We've got a lot of seniors who are in a 4-bedroom suburban home. I think of my parents who bought such a home in the 1980s that they use, about 10% of. If we could build more seniors friendly housing, and help them downsize into something that better suits their needs, not only would it help them, but it would help the next generation of families because it would free up that existing family size home. So there's a lot more we can be doing, all orders of government, but it all has to be focused on the cost of construction side. How can we get all of these costs down to allow us to build homes that the middle class can afford?
Right. So if you're a person looking to buy a home right now, you're a young person, you've got this dream of home ownership. Given your view of the market and where things are at right now, how would you describe the affordability piece of this for someone who's in that situation?
I would say that it's gotten better, but it feels, I used to run marathons, and it feels like we just finished mile 1 of a 26-mile marathon. So it's getting better, but we have a long way to go when it goes to affordability. I think we are going to see more price declines. I think particularly on the condo side, because there is in many communities such a glut of that inventory. On ground-oriented homes, again, your townhomes, your row homes, and so on. I think, unfortunately, unless governments act, we are going to see those prices start to come back up soon, just because there is so much pent-up demand. There's so many young people in their early 30s who, have been saving up for years and years and years to get that home. I think they're finally going to get to a point where they can do so, which is fantastic, but there's only so much inventory out there. So I do worry that very soon we are going to start to see the price of family homes start to go back up again.
Mike Moffatt, thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Mike Moffatt is a housing economist and the founder of the Missing Middle Initiative at Carleton University. That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Danielle Nerman, Jenny DeRosio, and Jennifer Keene, with help from Jeff Kynock. And if you have a second, give us a rating, 5 stars, maybe a review, because we do read the reviews, and you've said some nice stuff, so thanks for that. I'm Paul Havershood. Thanks for listening.